Ninja Production.
Welcome back, everybody, to At the Source of Carnival. I'm Shermica Farquhar. We have Ken Sambury and Dr. Joanne Tull today.
Hi, Dr. Tull. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm very happy to be here with you and Shermica today. I would like to welcome you all to my studio. As you can see, we are in front of a collage of good memories from when I used to have events and fetes and so on.
When we could be together.
Yeah. But the thing is,
when I could have my students come and work in them and audit.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, good times ahead, because we are always looking forward and there will be good things to come. And I feel like this little time of not having fetes and not having events has allowed for new opportunity. And that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yes,
Very, very, very true. Before we jump into what we're seeing ahead, I want to give Dr. Tull the opportunity to tell the At the Source folks a little bit about herself.
Yes, tell us.
Oh, wow. Where to begin? So, my PhD is in international relations, which another way of saying global affairs, anything to do with health, education, business, economics, finance, but looking at it from a global perspective. That's how I like to think of international relations. Some people know it more familiarly in terms of foreign service, diplomacy. You know, it's a very exciting field. So I suppose people would be wondering, how did I get into Carnival? So my research area when I was in grad school at the Institute of International Relations was looking at the business of copyright and how copyright could actually become another dimension of trade for us in the region. And somewhere along that line, meandering, I was offered an opportunity to teach this very landmark course at the university called the Economics of Culture.
Okay.
That was created by Ralph Henry, Dr. Ralph Henry, and had been taken over by Dr. Keith Nurse, and then I was asked to do it at the Department of Creative and Festival Arts many moons ago. And I never left. And not only did I not leave, but I started to get into other areas of work. You see, the Economics of Culture as a course fell into a program called Carnival Studies. And somewhere along the line, I was asked to coordinate that program. And what I brought to the program was the business of arts, entrepreneurship side of things, because my background is social sciences, and my first degree was public sector management. So I had a very keen sense about development economics and managing development and developing management, and that's what I brought to the table. So if you've heard of your friends or your colleagues doing courses like economics of culture, economics of copyright, business strategies for the arts, all of those are courses that I would have created. Festival management, which is where my students meet Ken sometimes, and they have to do their coursework. And the idea, of course, is that we find ways to be sustainable in our indigenous endeavors. And one of our very pivotal and prominent areas of that in Trinidad and Tobago and in the rest of the Caribbean is the Carnival. And so the Carnival has brought many opportunities for me as an academic. I have been fortunate to manage people as well. Denise Belfort was one of my artists at one point in time, worked with Benjai, was fortunate to work with Marshall Montano, Elizabeth Montano and their team. And doing that, how can I forget, Home Drums Beat First as well, Pyramid out of Barbados that manages Lyric, Peter Ram. They were also my client, and we're still all very close. And the point of all of that, why I'm mentioning it, is that I believe that practice is also important. I could be an academic and I could write on it based on what I learned and what I consider in my mind and teach. But if you get out there and you engage with persons like you are, Shermica and Ken, you know, it gives you a greater perspective. And it makes for a richer discussion, a richer engagement for your students, because now you are talking what is real as opposed to what you just simply think and come up with. So I think that's me in a nutshell there.
I love it, and I really appreciate you having the lens of being an academic, understanding the theory, and also a cultural practitioner. Like when you say like doing it in practice, because it is a cultural practice, this whole spiritual movement that is Carnival, and from the beginning to the end. And this year, we've experienced the season differently. Yes. I think there's the great debate. So some people are saying, so did Carnival happen or not? Right. I think it did.
I think it did. To go along with what you said about practice, I believe there is a philosophical underpinning or theory, if you want to call it that, that centers around the notion of lived experience. And there is a way in which one can engage in that as an academic or a researcher or a young scholar. But I actually think it's also very useful as practitioners or business people, the lived experience. And if you take on board the idea or the argument behind the lived experience, which is that everything that happens, it unfolds quite naturally, but you take note of it. And you not only take note of it, you document it however you can. And you can document it using your phone, your tablet, whatever may be your thing, or maybe like Ken, your drone. You could just get crazy with it. But the point is, when you look back at it, whatever you're seeing through those lenses, it's something that is worth introspection, it is worth comment, it is worth you engaging with it. You can think of the future and what may be your opportunities ahead. So having said that now, for me, yes, Carnival did happen. And Carnival happened in some of the same ways, but it happened in new ways. And Carnival didn't happen for the public sector. That's where Carnival didn't happen. And in a sense, maybe that was a good thing. I said maybe. I didn't say it was a good thing. And I say maybe because on a particular level, the state intervention is always important. The state is a facilitator. I know there are people right now who are challenging that notion. A friend of mine recently asked me about a paper that Dr. Nurse wrote many ages ago in trying to examine that as to whether or not we could still give consideration and even support to the idea of the state being a facilitator of Carnival. But if we go along with the idea of lived experience again, the state will always have a role. Exactly. But it does not mean that it rests with the state alone. So when we look at the things that happened in Carnival this year, to my mind, it did happen, and it happened in some important ways. People got to ask themselves about how they are Carnival, and sometimes we hear artists talk these things. You know, we hear it in the music, whether it's Soka or Calypso, we see it in the mass, sometimes the design, and not necessarily contemporary, but sometimes you see that the name of the piece somehow reflects this idea of I am Carnival. So to me, individuals had a chance to think that. They did not necessarily get to display that, though you did see some people do it with their work, wearing certain things at work. But you saw a lot of introspection online where people talked about what this meant to them. Memory is very important to live the experience. And then most certainly in terms of all of what we saw online. Yeah. In terms of the various events, in terms of the talks. I mean, I talked more this Carnival season than ever. But talks, I mean, I talk in the feds when I go. We have talked. When we were at Jamaica Carnival 2019, lovely party going on. Ken and I are talking, talking about the business of Carnival. I do that all the time, but it was different this time. Yeah. Because it wasn't just Ken and Joanne talking or Shermica and Joanne talking, but others were hearing because we were on an online platform and they could give their responses to what you were saying. This space is really a time of opportunity. And I mean, as an academic, I just outline all of what I'm doing for the year. My year was busy last year because first you were asked to contemplate what this likely could mean. I ran a survey looking at how the festival ecosystem was affected by COVID. So that data is there for anybody who needs it. And then from there I was asked, I think it was CDB, asked me to contemplate resilience. And I decided to take a philosophical look at that. You can't contemplate resilience if you don't know what the word resilience means for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Resilience for us in the Caribbean can't be resilience in North America.
somebody else.
It's
Yeah.
very
or
different.
UK.
Mm-hmm.
And
Agreed.
I think it's important, and I suppose that's because I come from that political economy, development economics
Perspective.
mind
background,
frame.
yeah.
I believe that small is beautiful. I share that view with Shermica, who wrote that. I remember the late Honorable Rowan Arthur. I subscribe to a lot of his thoughts in terms of economics for the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And if one is to contemplate resilience, one has to remember the place that you're at in terms of development.
Yep.
Yep.
And within the carnival landscape, development is a very schizophrenic kind of thing. You know, there are those that have and those that don't.
Yes.
And then there are those that have something that is of important value, the indigenousness, the legacy that would have handed down from generation to generation, but they don't necessarily have the capital
Yes.
or the
Yes.
systems that this other one may have. You see, and so when we talk about development and resilience, we have to take all of that into consideration as you try to understand how it is that you can chart your way forward. Opportunity to me lies within your capacity to understand what you can do beyond what you see in front of you.
Yes.
So we always look outside and say, well, wow, let's look at this culture here and look at that culture there. There's so much happening right here that we could embrace, you know, and I've always found the subtle differences within how carnival is practiced in Ireland. So just something as simple as when Juve is in Barbados, there's something that I always looked at, hey, you know, Juve's on a different day.
4-day morning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 days.
Something
4 days
totally
different.
different. Yeah, exactly.
You get fancy for 4 days.
Yeah.
Yes, you,
You get
can.
fa-
You could, you might.
You might, yes, okay.
Yeah, so it's
When I
something.
did crop over, I got fancy for 4 days.
Yes,
Sorry.
you could,
my,
you might.
My lived
I'll
experience.
put it like that. You
Yeah.
could get fancy, you might get
you
fancy.
might.
Exactly, and that's something that is totally new to me. Like for me, like I don't know much about it. You'll have been there at least 3 times. All right.
But I think it's very interesting how we've segued here to this as we talked about the 4-day morning and what have you, and even that Juve that you experienced in Tobago. And I think it's important for people to appreciate. I know there's that disconnect or that dichotomy between what is traditional and
Yes.
authentic and real, and what is this new thing and it's not worth much of anything. Should we kind
Let-
of just
let's-
kind of
Like Ken wants to
talk
use the
that a little
microphone and
bit?
Shermica wants to use the fancy clip-ons, for
Yeah,
instance.
yeah.
But I feel like
something
it's
like,
like
that.
that kind of
We're gonna
thing.
bring you guys up to speed.
But if I may say, you know, it's like there is contemporary heritage, and this is a place that the Caribbean has not quite reached, even in terms of our research and
Yes.
writings. My experience with that is playing contemporary mass for all of these years, what people may call beads and bikini. And I am talking about my first band was Barbarossa.
Please tell the people what the
Masquerade.
old yard is, because I know it. I've been. It's amazing. But Dr. Tull chairs that, so please.
Well, I hope
Oh, you've attended?
Yeah.
I've never attended.
he
you know.
was to come.
Organized
Yeah,
He
this
was
year.
to come this year. I don't know
Well,
what happened. Oh, you had an event.
Yeah, at an event.
Well, as I'm saying this, I hope this footage to go with this, because to talk about the old yard, but you can't see something. Woo boy.
So, Coach, we have some clips, and we'll put something together.
So the old yard is the University of the West Indies' Department of Creative and Festival Arts' contribution to the traditional masquerade landscape that I was fortunately given the opportunity to direct. And it previously was called VA La Coup. And VA La Coup was something that was done by persons who recognized the importance of the traditional masquerade. They were led by Val Rogers and his team, and the NCC used to give direct support to it.
Okay.
The last time I saw it, it would have been down at Boy Scouts. That's where they were traditionally, and I was blown away. And I think, to be honest, sometimes when one is not from a space and you come into it like myself,
You
I'm a
appreciate.
proud Barbadian. I appreciate the uniqueness. I mean, I suppose I could say this. Fun fact about me is because of Carnival, I chose to stay here.
Oh.
I heard Marshall Montano's Big Truck. I had not even met them yet. I had just done 1 year of grad school. I heard pam, pam, pam on the road. I was blown
Play the
away.
way.
And I was like, what? no, I don't think I could leave here. I think I want to understand this place. At that time, I had no clue I would have ended up in Carnival. But I say that curiosity for me, I've always kept it to try to help the work. So in the case of the Old Yard, I did the same. We were approached last minute, one Carnival 10 years ago. It was like 3 weeks before Carnival. This event
We still
was
Caribbean.
happening.
That's Caribbean time. That's good time.
And at the time, the head of our department, Roy Gibbons, who is a Carnival academic in his own right, he said, "Joe, waiting." I said, "All right, we could do it. We could try." And based on my background doing management, I remember I was fascinated, I should say, and I used to read it, corporate culture work. I had taught that course too a little bit. And I had stumbled on some work by a gentleman called Van Man, looking at the Disney experience. I mean, he wrote on it on both sides, but he was particularly concerned, of course, of the negative impacts. But I was more fascinated with the other side of it from an event management standpoint. And by the time this Old Yard opportunity had come, I had already been teaching festival management a good while. And I was teaching programming, which is what we call it. Started to write on programming. I said, boy, I wonder how I do. And I decided that I would make this an experience where you would come into the yard and you would it would be a lived experience.
Yes.
You would it's a barrack yard style, which is how the masquerade used to come out back in those days in the streets of Port of Spain. When you're at the entrance, it's a lady dressed in character. Some of these people are staff members, you know. You go to the bar, you go to the parlor, it's people in character dress. You see people playing dominoes, a fight might break out between the lady with the big breasts and the man with the big bumsy. It's all very alive. Your accreditation persons, students in character. If you need directions to go to the bathroom, you'll have a character.
I learned sailor dance when I went.
That's right, it's very interactive. The music isn't only traditional, but you will get some of the contemporary hits because our DJ he's the same DJ that has been with V.I. Lecoux, and we keep him. So we
What's the name of the DJ?
Oh, I don't remember his name.
No problem.
Don't put me on the spot like
That's okay, that's okay.
But he is part of the lived experience. He is part of the heritage. You could interview him and he could tell you all about the Old Yard from his perspective. Our head of department is the MC. He was the MC for V.A. Lecoux. I could tell you his name. Louis McWilliams. And so what we did was insert the class, the festival management class, that they would learn how to manage an event. Before we used to do a fete. And we had stopped doing the fete, and here it is now that we had this Old Yard that we could do the same thing. And so it's like a living museum, that's what I call it, a traditional masquerade heritage fair. And you come there and people might say, I've had this, elders come in and say, that's not the real thing, but every interpretation is heritage in of itself.
Correct.
Yes.
Every new interpretation is contemporary heritage in the making. It doesn't take away or it doesn't dispel from what's there before. What we try to do is to do an exhibition as well, so that there's always that element of the traditional, the original, interfacing with some of the new. Architecture for us is a big deal through our artistic consultant, Camille. She is the one who designs all that tapestry work that you see.
Everything's covered, like it's a new world.
So you are just transported back to the days of the backyard when that was how traditional masquerade was done.
So a lot of the things that I create today are going to be like the cultural heritage of the future. And I feel like if this is recognized, the better it will be for everybody, not just me alone. So just taking myself out of the equation, this is true for every single practitioner who's bringing new things to the table, especially now because it's COVID-19 time and we're in a pandemic. So now you find that, you see, before the adjustments, like let's say the beads and bikini was more preference, right? It wasn't necessarily because the summer was hot and you wanted more breeze. It was because that's what you wanted to wear because your
Fashion
preference has
statement.
now changed.
It just changes.
Yeah,
It
your preference has
changes
changed.
in style, is changes and what's going on in your wider sociocultural ecosystem. One of the things I can certainly point to that would have facilitated or given impetus to that shift is that two things really, and we have to be frank about this. There was a point in time where your mass designer, your master artisan, didn't necessarily have persons coming to sit at his feet to learn how to make a mask or how to design. And in a sense, we were at a place at the university where we weren't necessarily offering that training.
Right.
We did go ahead eventually and created a certificate. We've not had opportunity to run it as yet.
Okay.
But what I had done, along with persons in the mass sector, was to use that as the template to create the standards that you have for mass design now.
Yeah.
Right.
So there are places like Caribbean Campus that offer you the training as to how to make masks. And that's based on the certificate that myself and a former colleague of mine, Kenwin Murray, and some other stakeholders from the Carnival landscape got together with the NTA official, and we created those standards.
I have a question based on this.
Right? So there's that gap. One, don't forget your question.
No, I'm going to remember it.
And then secondly, because there was that gap, what you saw started to happen was that fashion designers saw it. And mind you, we did have fashion designers who came. One of my former students is Keisha House. And Keisha was doing a communications degree and came over to Carnival, and we are still close in a sense.
Right.
We talked about 2 weeks ago, and Keisha's engagement with Carnival studies and all of what she knew before and what was her fashion instinct has led her to be one of our leading designers of Monday wear and what have you. And I mean, there are many others who may not have necessarily come to DCFA UWI, but the point is, there are fashion designers that took up that mantle. It means now that as fashion designers, we know that they are reactive to shifts in the global arena, but they're also proactive. They're also ones that create their own style, and you saw that coming into the masquerade. I think music sometimes plays a role in that as well, because it depends on what's the sound and how it's going.
Correct.
I think those things make
a
difference.
It's a confluence, and there's also a huge tension, right? Carnival is about resistance. And so what we're just very much, because there's so much exposure, right?
Yes.
I think
more ways than one.
right, all the exposure now, we have the traditionalists, we'll say, the tension in the mass world, in the carnival world is, there's the traditionalists and there's the contemporaries. What is mass? How do we say that this is mass? Because I do believe everybody is out for the betterment of the cultural practice. We are all carnival babies who wanted to survive. And the traditionalists are like, if we lose the traditions, then it's not authentic.
Right.
Whereas at some point in time, what is now a tradition was contemporary.
We will never lose the traditions, is
Right.
my view.
I agree.
I think if we are very honest with ourselves and we forget about the floss for now, I'm going to use the language that they would use, the floss and the little string that's in the box. You do see elements of the traditional there. The wire bra. A lot of the persons, I wrote this recently, a paper that will soon be published, I hope. I've not seen it come out as yet. But the wire bra subsector, is based on a number of young people taking up those same NTA standards to learn how to bend wire. Bending wire is a tradition.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And it just looks
It's a
I
tradition,
learned
it's
how
a
to
skill,
bend wire, and learning to bend wire, I could put up one of the best looking Christmas trees for anybody because it's based on the same skill.
Technique,
People will say, but how you get that out like that? So the point is, there are practices of tradition that are very much important to informing the way in which the contemporary unfolds. Anytime you start to talk in those terminologies along here, as a political economist, we will tell you that everything is cyclical. And so when the golden era of mass would have started with Bailey, when he would have put out that epic mass, the mass that was there before, they were like, he crazy? All these people he putting out there, back to Africa? What is that, a black and white mass? You could go look that up and probably Google who were the others designing masks at the time of Bailey. And look at what they were doing and just do a juxtaposition to see. Bailey, when one looks at what was the mask that legends used to put out, Big Mike and that Trini Revelers, that spawned Barbarossa. Listen to the names of the bands, that spawned from Bailey's kind of mass, what
Yep.
I like to call the epic mass, the Ben-Hur kind of mass.
Right.
Right? There's that.
We got our 2 minutes again, sign.
Poison. Same thing again. He come out with this band, he franchising sections. What madness is that? 10,000 people you put in a row for a band? What craziness. And so we continue to see these shifts.
When we sit to conceptualize, and we might, meaning my event team, new things, it's all based on things in the past, you know.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, so like we
More
would
things
take,
change,
yeah, we
more
would take
things
elements of things in the past, and we would say, how could we now apply this
Yes.
to 2021?
Now, I do wish to stick a pin to say this though, that there are instances, and here is where I will not drop a name or call a name
All
or
right.
point a finger, where one does see contemporalizations within the carnival that are really not seeped in anything or hardly seeped in much of anything to do with the carnival. And we do have to be honest
Yeah, no,
about
it's
that.
true. This was easy,
This
convenient, and
yes,
attractive.
that's
Consumable.
right,
It was
that's
consumable.
right? And so therefore, in that regard, I don't give the traditionalists the wrong. But
Right.
the idea of tradition in terms of the carnival, that pure, it's not, it's an old theory. Adorno felt that way about the cultural industries. When, as a matter of fact, the term culture industry was not a term that was created in a flattering sense. He created it as a way of showing his disdain and disgust for the fact that music and theater, the performing arts at that time, were becoming industrialized, you know. At that time, the gramophone had come in. Prior to that, the way in which you consume music was to go to the hall
Yes.
to sit and watch music. And for him, that was the thing to do and the way to do it.
Right.
But when the gramophone came, and if you could have afforded technology, and as we know with the story with all technology, as it becomes pervasive, it becomes cheaper, it becomes more accessible. And therefore, if you have a piece of technology, it's going to spawn other forms of technology. Because if you have a gramophone, I mean, somebody's recording something somewhere,
Agreed.
then where is this going to be played? Not only in the home, so then the radio comes along.
Yep.
And so for him, it was like, no, man, but this is not culture again. This is not the arts and culture. This is the culture industry. And what nonsense is this? That is how he felt all way back
And
then.
here we are.
And here we are. And we do have persons in Carnival that feel that all of what you see come Carnival Monday and Tuesday in the streets of Port of Spain, that is not Carnival. And my feeling of it is that Carnival is a whole lot more than that.
Yes.
But that can't be excluded. There are various elements of Carnival. That's what makes it dynamic. I am also one of those who don't share that view that the traditional mass is dying, perhaps because of the other hat that I wear at UWI in terms of the old yard. But I do believe that every year people make the interpretations even of the traditional masquerade, and that too is heritage.
And it's part of the carnival.
And
I
it's
think
part of the carnival.
It's inclusive. I want to say one of the things about Soka Tribe, I'm like, we want to share the joy, the freedom, the connection and expression that is part of carnival.
Yeah.
And it's a practice. So it's not just about what I'm wearing, it's how I'm feeling, what I'm going
Yes.
through, the connecting with my people.
Yes.
And that aspect, so when I put on a costume, and if I can tell you the story
Yeah.
behind this costume, you might see beads in a bikini, but I feel like a hummingbird.
Yeah.
And that
Yes.
is bringing it all back, because
Yes,
it's
that
about
can't
the
be
storytelling.
taken away from you.
You can't take
You
that.
can't take that away from
What
the
I think
individual.
the traditionalists are they're losing the points is exposure, right? Because they're fighting at this. We're in the day and age of social media. We were all in our homes, right? So when you're thinking, who has access to the huge social media followings? Who's being able to? I'm going to say, not succeed, right? Because what's cultural success? And I'm not ready for that smoke.
Yes.
But who's getting that exposure? And that's why I think people say things like it's dying, because they're not
Yeah.
seeing themselves.
Right.
They're not reflected in the
Right.
media as much, and so it's a concern of
So-
scarcity.
So to give that background context, if I could help
Please
with that.
do. Please do. You see, I'm poking.
You see, the thing is, okay, so we do have within our copyright laws in Trinidad and Tobago, works of mass is part of it.
Okay.
Trinidad and Tobago is the only country, as far as I know, where works of mass has been included. That's one of the unique things about the Trinidad and Tobago Copyright Act. What does that mean? Well, that there are ways or mechanisms, and I know they did have some challenges with it at one point in time, but when it was working or happening, and I am sticking a caveat here, it may still be working, but when it was working to the extent where I know bands would receive royalty checks and whatnot based on persons coming and paying their accreditation to film and take pictures of the mass.
Wow.
What would happen is two things. If they've heard of it before and they know of it from a popular culture standpoint, certain bands, I'm not going to call names here, certain bands would get the lion's share.
Interesting.
And because of that, there would be this assumption that that is all Carnival is. But then, I'm going to call a name now as a juxtaposition, the National Geographic photographer would come. And they would go and film or take pictures of Vieille Le Coup. Or then when we took it over, the Old Yard.
Yes.
And so you would also see that. There's a photographer, he likes that kind of work, and he has taken pictures of the Old Yard. There was a lovely spread in the Caribbean beat, I believe it was last year or year before, butte on the Old Yard.
I want to talk about now, in the carnival that we had, because we decided we had a carnival, right? The amount of change and innovation, where do you think that's going to go?
Right. Well,
as we move forward?
Well, I think it's like, you will have, if I may draw the analogy back to Ken and the mic and Shermica with the wireless and the clip-on, where you'll have that jockeying for position in the first instance.
And compromise.
But yes, it will all settle down and it will all be there in the landscape. And I'll tell you why. The mic with the stand will have to stay because we are very cognizant of the fact that many people are employed through the carnival.
Yes.
Directly and indirectly. In addition to which, Shermica would have mentioned early on about the spirit of carnival. And the spirit of carnival, fortunately or unfortunately, does not reside on a screen.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can take
only so
from
much,
that.
it's experience,
right?
it's feel.
And so there's that aspect of it where there is a lot in the domestic context that is dependent on that needs to continue in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
The individual, him or herself, having gone through the COVID, and I dare say we don't know what will happen next year. I have my views, but I won't put that here. You know, they will want to release.
Yes.
And so that the mic and the mic stand will have to stay. At the same time, some of the creative enterprises and entrepreneurs within, or as I would say, carnival entrepreneurs, have recognized that there are ways in which they can certainly engage with the modern, which is the digital environment. And I mean, that extends to VAR. The Old Yard has an opportunity to do a similar thing. And we are looking to do it, even though Carnival has passed. Fingers crossed it'll work out. And that can do so much in terms of that sustainable impact that we want, that we've been talking about. Because you're talking now about a person never having reached for Trinidad Carnival but can see it wherever they are in the world.
Accessibility is...
The digital allows for an accessibility that is mind-blowing. Where we fall short in the region is that we are still weak when it comes to digital commercialization. Right? We are still a region where we are grappling to understand cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. There are a few people in the region who are making some money from it, but we still see that with suspicion. We are still a place where you can go somewhere and they don't have a links machine. And yet we are talking about the opportunities that abound from the digital platform, the digital interface for Carnival. And if we are to get there, it means that our society is in need of that upgrade, that digital financial literacy, where they can take advantage of the opportunities that market would afford. And I am talking about this being taught in schools.
I love that idea.
From the secondary, from the
Somebody
primary
say it
school
again.
level go up.
Say it
I
again.
am talking about this being taught in schools.
So much power in education. Say it
Because
again.
your mind can't wrap around that when you come to university almost immediately if you've not been
encouraged
to engage with it.
Yeah, because you're going to be like, what?
It's so far.
So we have a scenario right now that for those who may have dabbled, and I'm using the word dabble, no disrespect to anyone who made the efforts.
Right.
I went to one and I had a wonderful time, but you've dabbled, right? I don't know how much money you made. I hope you did make some money. but you've dabbled. I know that the corporate sponsorship did kick in a lot. I'm well aware of that. But that can't be the model. We're talking about it being out there and you being able to earn that foreign exchange via the digital platform.
Yeah.
And outside of Carnival, poor Miss Carnival always get the blame for a lot of
Listen.
things. Outside of Carnival, we ain't there yet. So the fact is, Carnival has given us an opportunity to get there.
You know, Dr. Tull, so I'm just going to comment from the first set of things that you said.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that you took over from Dr. Keatness, because Dr. Keatness is actually very instrumental in my development as well.
Yes.
He lectured me when I was doing my master's, actually in doing business internationally and in the Caribbean. And I feel as though the ideology of knowing what you don't know that I live by today comes from his teaching. And, you know, it's really good for us to practice, you know, actually working within the carnival sector, you know,
I
at
agree.
the source, but then still using the theories that we have learned from our academic background, you know, in doing so. And I feel as though we as a country in Trinidad and Tobago and also different parts of the Caribbean, we have really benefited a lot from education. So I would like to encourage all of the academics out there to get a bit more involved in Carnival, because I see this as a renewable resource, you know?
Yes.
And I think there is a very, like for some academics, like some people I went to school with, there's a very, you know, it feels very tedious, you know, it feels like, you know, so much stuff is going on, and, you know, I might work with somebody and then they might forget about me, versus I just go and work for like a regular corporate company, and then, you know, I understand that environment. But I feel as though here is where it goes beyond, you know, a corporate job, but it's more us as a Caribbean having a movement that we all can be proud of, and as Dr. Tull says, it's now sustainable.
Carnival Spirit is ongoing, and now that we're not time bound by the parade, and we're going to what about moving past Ash Wednesday with things?
And when I say changing, not changing that you wouldn't come and see an old year, but just the fact that there's opportunity to explore this other way. Because remember, I said that it will all settle down.
Yes.
I am a strategist who believes in having your cake and eat it. And I see that the carnivals beyond here are one where we can have our cake and eat it. We can continue to have, once we've all been inoculated and what have you, that face-to-face thing. Because guess what? The person that sees that online is going to say, I really need to see this place. That's
I
how
want to
people
go.
desire to see Brazil and Paris. They see it on TV. They see it on cable. Now we're in a digital environment. They see it online. They're like, oh my gosh,
I can't wait.
That's on my bucket list. I need to go Bora Bora. I need to go Paris. I need to this. So it will be the same thing for us. And what will be different is that it wouldn't just be a case of seeing, and this is something, again, we have to appreciate why the traditionalists will be upset. It won't be the case of seeing when you Google Trinidad Carnival, all you see is a set of contemporary masks and women whining. Because that's what you get. But if it is that you really engage the digital environment in the ways that we are talking about, and in relation to what we've seen this year, if we have a lot more of that, then when you Google Trinidad Carnival, you will start to see the diversity of the platform or the diversity of the ecosystem that makes up Trinidad Carnival.
In the last 3 weeks, I've seen NPR, 2 Harper's Bazaar, New York Times, a whole spread on several different aspects of it, and not just, you know, the bikini. It was, this is what it means. This is what happened with the music. I love the NPR article that literally they talked about. It's such a joint cultural ritual. Can you imagine someone canceling Christmas? That's what it's like canceling Carnival in Trinidad. However, the Soka artists prevailed. And I was like, that, again, it's the eyeballs. Because when somebody Googles, right? Those larger platforms are having the conversation. I think this slowdown really gave people time to reflect. And space to have the conversation. Because like you said, you and Ken was at the Fete talking about it because you're already thinking there. But the layman who's just, I'm so overwhelmed on my bucket list, I jump in, I jam, and I can't do nothing else.
Oh no, they don't care.
Now they're reading about it. Which is a large part of why I started the series. Like, Ken, I'm here. Let me do a thing.
Yes, yes.
I wanted to find out from you,
Yes.
like real simply. So, what's the plan for the rest of the year? So, like, what is happening? Like, I really don't know. You know, you have to tell me.
This is in terms of me or Carnival?
This is in terms of you.
Okay.
Yeah, this is about you.
Finishing up a book.
Okay, very
the
nice.
Okay.
First, I think I can say it now. The
Dun, dun, dun.
The first publication on the CCIs, the Creative and Cultural Industries of the Caribbean. The very
Amazing.
first.
Congrats.
My awesome Tower House co-author, co-editor, Dr. Deborah Hickland-Gordon. We share very similar energy. She's from Jamaica.
Okay.
Nice.
And yeah, we have been able to secure the writings of some of our colleagues from across. Well, I think now I'm at a place where we can talk about waves in terms of when we came into doing this research. Not to shock anybody on the screen, but I've been doing this some 20 years now. And there are
So,
some
this is
people-
research for this book or just research in general on this topic?
Sorry?
This is research in general or research for this book?
Well, this is research for this book. What
Okay.
we're working on right now. We don't have, which I think a lot of people don't realize, we don't have a publication yet on the Caribbean creative economy.
Yeah, I definitely realize that. But yes, I agree.
We
'Cause
have
you're looking for the
papers.
information.
Yeah.
You can go online, you can go on my Academia EDU site, for example, you get papers. I see people from all over the world downloading, all over the world, literally. Japan, I've countries I never even thought that somebody be reading my work.
Yeah.
I'm sure some of my other colleagues have had a similar experience through the Academia EDU site. Certainly sometimes you get an email, but there's not that one book.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
agreed.
The Bible of it all.
Yeah, we're doing a reader in that regard. That's one. Doing some work happily for my mother country, so to speak.
I was going to tell you to tell the
Barbados.
people that
Yes,
we
yes.
know where you're from.
Barbados, yes, that's probably a very intriguing thing as well. This Barbadian running this Carnival Studies program. That's another story, maybe another podcast. But yes, the government and people of Barbados secured my services last year to look at crop over.
Very nice.
So with my research assistant, Christian Kendall, brilliant young man. I heard he did a boss of a presentation just
He did?
recently
Very nice.
from Shermica. And we are looking at how we're going to chart the future for Barbados crop over. And so in that regard, government has a role to play.
Yeah,
the
for sure.
National
Yeah, definitely.
Cultural Foundation would have been the ones to have secured that that service. And the point is that it's not that government is supposed to seek to put out money to make money, but rather that in putting out money out there, they see it as an investment
Yes.
on behalf of the people, and that we can look across the spectrum of the economy and see where that return on investment is coming. And
Clearly.
we do see it. I mean, when
We see the return every year. Carnival is a huge
Yes.
moneymaker,
Yes,
right?
If you go down to
So-
CSO and you can collect, well, okay, tourism, because they do collect the data.
Yeah.
A simple basic thing at looking at visitor arrivals, and you look what they spend for that 2 weeks of Carnival, it would blow your mind.
Right.
And there's also other data that we could be collecting. We can have a sense of employment. I mean, these are things that we still are very behind on. So I
Yeah.
suppose, in a sense, my third thing that I'm doing for the rest of this year is giving some serious thought as to how we're going to improve that, which is the other big thing. Some big things happen this year.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot.
So
Jesus.
Caribbean Development
Yeah.
Bank, we won a grant
Congrats.
just about 3 weeks ago to address that. So
Very
we
good.
are going to be creating, I'm saying we,
So
on
who is
behalf of
we?
me and my team.
Right.
So I would have been the lead on it. 2 colleagues, usual suspects, Dr. Keith Nurse and Dr. Sonia Stanley Nair. She's at Muna. And that's one. And then another one I'm working with my colleague and friend out of Bahamas. She's John Canoe
Okay.
Carnival Commandos. They're award-winning, globally well-known. So on the one hand, we'll be crafting some training platforms that should be, hopefully, fingers crossed, accredited by the university. So people can come and get a certificate in how you measure your festival. It's very critical. Learn how you process assessing your festival, how you gather data that will help you to give a more convincing record of what you do in your festival to a bank, an investor, an angel funder, whatever may be the case.
Right.
And then on the Junkanoo side, in terms of that organization, we as the educational institutions, we are her partners, holding her hand that she becomes a trainer, that she can in turn share that with other
I see.
community-based
Amazing.
festival organizations, and then it spreads out across the
Teach
region.
them all to fish. So they can do
So
it better.
it's not a lot of money, but it's good money.
It's good work.
It's good work, and I'm saying it like that because it's grant funding.
Yeah.
And I am emphasizing that because I think, again, to underscore the importance of governments and non-state actors that are like governmental organizations, so the Caribbean Development
Agreed.
Banks, CARICOM, UNESCO. These are all Caribbean Export. These are all very important entities in the region that recognize the importance of our creative and cultural ecosystem in the Caribbean, and they do see the potential. I think sometimes that we sometimes fall short from the government perspective in terms of seeing down the road as to the true export potential. Stakeholders get it, but sometimes there's that disconnect. You know, that's not anything I'm going to tackle this year.
Yeah.
How to bridge
Your
that.
plate feels really heavy.
Yes. And other than that, I think I want for myself at this place to give some thought to myself in terms of how I can contribute more. Recently started the Creatives Clinic, and I want to see how that is going to serve the stakeholders more. Have a few clients, you know.
Something.
Yeah. But
Well, I think for myself and my group, and I know many others, we would have always wanted to, well, one, collect data because we understand the importance of data analytics, and then we would have always wanted to find ways to push what we're doing to the diaspora and also to people globally and monetize that.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very happy that now this is a serious topic of conversation.
Yeah.
But I also feel like there was a guy I met, his name was Matthew Crisp, and he said he was born in the UK, and he came to Trinidad, and he was one of the people responsible for organizing the importation of the 40-feet trailers
interesting.
in Trinidad and Tobago.
Wow.
And when he gave me that story, I met him because he and I had like the same drone at the time. It was this big new drone and whatnot, and he had all these skills to fly.
The drone is
The
important.
drone.
And when he gave me that story, it reminded me that, look, these things came from somewhere, you know.
Yes.
This wasn't always the case. Carnival, Monday and Tuesday, the parade wasn't always all-inclusive.
No.
So based on me understanding that, because all of that, when he was giving me that story, all that time, I was probably in primary school or early second, probably primary school. And it allowed me to understand that, like, now we have this immense push to take our soca music, to take Carnival from different islands, take our culture, the culture from Tobago, and really push it into that international context where we will be able to monetize it.
And thank you so much, Dr. Tull, for joining us
You
today.
guys are most welcome. It's very
Amazing chat.
engaging. Very amazing conversation, I must say. Some great food for thought. And, you know, I look forward to more of what y'all are doing. Y'all build your roads, man. Build your roads.
Everything.
Yes.
Let me go.
Thank you so much. All right, so this has been another episode of Soka Tribe. It's probably episode 4/5 because, you know, the conversations are so great. We had to split it into
We are splitting
multiple
things up.
episodes. But we will definitely be there with you soon. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.